I ask the impossible, love me forever, by Ana Castillo. I ask the impossible, love me forever. Love me when all desire is gone. Love me with the single-mindedness of a monk. When the world in its entirety and all that you hold sacred advise you against it, love me still more. When rage fills you and has no name, love me. When each step from your door to our job tires you, love me. And from job to the home again, love me. Love me. Love me when you're bored. When every woman you see is more beautiful than the last or more pathetic. Love me as you always have. Not as an admirer or judge, but with the compassion you save for yourself in your solitude. Love me as you relish your loneliness, the anticipation of your death, mysteries of the flesh as it tears and mends. Love me as your most treasured childhood memory. And if there's none to recall, imagine one. Place me there with you. Love me withered as you love me new. Love me as if I were forever. And I will make the impossible a simple act by loving you as I do. Poet, novelist, playwright, translator, editor, and scholar, Ana Castillo is one of the most celebrated Latina writers of our time. She is a master of words, employing experimental techniques, mixing genres, and toying with modalities. Ana Castillo is fearless. A proud Chicana and impassioned activist, Ana usually laces her work with layers and layers of rich detail that creates emotional depth, while at the same time addressing more serious modern-day issues of social justice, like race and gender equality. I was introduced to Ana Castillo's work by a friend a long time ago, and I've enjoyed her work over the years. But I didn't find this piece until recently, when I was looking for poems to feature in this project. I Ask the Impossible, Love Me Forever caught my attention, and I really enjoyed reading it as I lingered online. But the more I dug around the subject of marriage, the more poems I read, the more often I returned to this poem. There is something so simple yet so meaningful here that I just couldn't get it out of my mind. In many ways, this poem reminds me of 1 Corinthians verses 13 and 14, which are often recited at weddings or spoken as vows. And in that way, it alludes to love as it relates to the sanctity of marriage. However, there is so much more to this poem. First of all, I really love the disclaimer. That's the first part of that very first line. I ask the impossible, the narrator says, as if to set us up for a feat of strength, a courageous deed. By giving us fair warning, the narrator achieves two things. First, the reader or intended audience understands that this is no regular poem. This is directed specifically to them. By doing this, the narrator creates a sort of vacuum, inviting the reader into a very intimate conversation. It is this intimacy that creates immediacy. And that is why we come back to it over and over again, because we want to make sure we understand what is being asked of us. The second part of that first line delivers the imperative statement, love me forever. Because love is so fragile, so fickle, the appeal stops us on our tracks. This is a lifelong commitment we're being asked to give, a marriage vow of sorts, to be sure. But as we read on, we begin to realize this poem has weight. Not just the emotional, but the spiritual are at risk here. This is evidenced by the repetition of the words love me in this poem. There are 13 love me's in this 26-line poem, which is fascinating mathematically, as this is a poem between two people, and 13 is half of 26. I like that balance, that equity. I also find it interesting that at lines 13 and 14, precisely right in the middle of this poem, the narrator's focus shifts away from using an external lens and hones in on the internal. In the first half of the poem, the narrator juxtaposes our understanding of romantic love to intriguing situational comparisons like love me with the single-mindedness of a monk, or when each step from your door to our job tires you, love me. However, in the second half of the poem, the narrator gets more intimate by shifting the focus to a more personal internal lens. The lines, love me as you relish your loneliness, and love me as your most treasured childhood memory, beg the reader to be real, to be honest and true. And in return, the last lines illustrate the powerful truth the narrator has been withholding all along, that they love the reader more than the reader will ever know, because the impossible is a simple act for them. This is a truly beautiful revelation, a gift to the reader. But it is that message delivered in lines 13 and 14 which asks the reader to love not as admirer or judge, but with the compassion you save for yourself, which is the central message. For the true nature of the poem is more than a love letter between two people. This piece invites us to look intimately at Jesus' request to love your neighbor as yourself, to consider a wider lens when we think about love and commitment. In a way, this poem is a call to action, with a narrator who is exercising their right to speak up for themselves, making a request for equity in the most basic of human rights, the right to receive love, compassion, and grace.